You're listening to A Radio.
Landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is the Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. Now this piece is a piece I came across quite recently. Some people have already seen this, but a lot of people haven't. So I thought it was an interesting piece enough to talk about it, because I have zero interest in talking about what those royal folk or ex-royal folk are doing. That's all I'm going to say on that subject. The title of the piece is Putin Proposes Changes to Russian Constitution. I didn't even know Russia had a constitution, but I guess it does. And it's from, and I can't pronounce this, so I'm just going to give you the letters. It's tsarizm.com, and the links will be on my site at some point when I can get to it. And it goes like this. In his annual State of the Union address, Russian President Vladimir Putin today proposed changes to the Russian constitution. Here is an outline of what was suggested to be approved by a plebiscite among the Russian population. Putin said that the low incomes of most households with children directly threatens Russia's demographic future and proposed a number of measures to support families, reported Russian state news agency TASS. Putin said that Russia has been able for the first time in history to become the world's leader in advanced weapons. Whoa, let's just back up here a bit. So Russia is having trouble building up its population. They haven't got enough money in the average family, yet they're spending money on advanced weapons. Why does a country that is so large as Russia need advanced weapons? What are they scared of? This is my point. I've never trusted Russia, the Soviet Union, or whatever they call themselves. America is the first line of defense for all of us. Russia has been developing what they call advanced nuclear weapons, and so has China. Why? What are they all scared of? Anyway, I'm going to continue. We are not threatening anyone, this is a quote from Putin, and are not seeking to impose our will. At the same time, I can assure everyone that our steps for strengthening our national security were made timely and in a sufficient volume, the Russian president said. Right, hold the phone. It's Russia who invaded Ukraine. It's Russia who stole the Crimea from Ukraine. Russia. Not Ukraine invading Russia. It's Russia who invaded Ukraine. That is why I get angry that my favourite sport, which is Formula One racing, supports that country, Russia, by showing a Russian Grand Prix in a country that invaded another country. I will not watch the Russian Grand Prix. Anyway, Putin has suggested putting a package of constitutional amendments to a popular vote. At the same time, the Russian president stated that he sees no grounds to adopt a new constitution in Russia. Quote, "It is time to make some changes to the fundamental law of the country, which would generate the priority of the Russian constitution in our legal space." That's a joke, isn't it? Let's be honest, folks. Come on. Anyway, the piece continues. What does this mean? It means the requirements of international law and decisions of international bodies can only be enforced in Russia to the extent that it does not violate human and civil rights and freedoms and does not violate our constitution, Putin said. Let me just read that again. they will honour international laws and bodies as long as it doesn't violate human and civil rights and freedoms and does not violate their constitution. Does anybody really think there's freedom of speech in Russia? Well, I can think of one person, Bernie Sanders for a start. But, let's get real here. Quote, I know that our society is discussing the constitutional provision the same person should not take the post of Russia's president for more than 2 terms in a row. I do not believe that this question is of fundamental importance, but I agree with this, Putin said. Russia is obliged to protect the historical truth about the victory in the Great Patriotic War, Putin said. I think the Great Patriotic War is World War II, but I'm not sure about that. He also said, this year we will celebrate the 75th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. May 9 in Russia is the greatest sacrosanct holiday. We are proud of the generations of victors. We remember their heroism. Our memory is not only a token of respect for the historic past, it serves our future, inspires us and strengthens our unity. We are obliged to protect the truth about the victory. Otherwise, what shall we be able to tell our children if lies are spread about the world like an epidemic, he said. Well, here's the problem. Russia fought the Second World War with massive help from the United States and Britain, but I'm sure that's conveniently missed out. If it wasn't for the fact of Britain and America breaking the blockade that Germany put on Russia, that it would not have survived. Many materials were sent to Russia during the Second World War and allowed them to survive and prosper and push back against Germany. I don't think Russia would have survived without that. We don't know for sure, but that was definitely a factor. But, it's like Japan only recently accepting the fact they lost the Second World War. Anyway, the piece continues. Russian President Vladimir Putin has proposed entrusting the State Duma, that's their parliament, the lower house, with power to nominate Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister and federal ministers, adding that the President will be obliged to appoint the nominated candidates. Russian President Vladimir Putin said in his annual State of the Union address to the Federal Assembly, Parliament that is, on Wednesday, added TASS, quote, I propose changing, and there's a gap there, they've obviously abbreviated it, the order and the task of the State Duma, with more than just agreeing, but also nominating candidate to head the Russian government. Later, upon their recommendation, the recommendation of Prime Minister, it will nominate all Deputy Prime Ministers and federal ministers, Putin said, underlining that the President will be legally obliged to appoint the candidates proposed. In other words, he will not be able to reject Parliament approval of these candidates to hold these official positions. He stressed, quote, I believe such proposals are justified, which will increase the role and importance of the national parliament. The role and importance of the State Duma and parliamentary parties will boost independence and responsibility of the Prime Minister and all cabinet members, and make cooperation between representative and executive branches of power more efficient and substantial, he concluded. Some critics looked at the proposed shifts in the selection of those powers as a prelude to the end of Putin's current term of president, the last one he can hold per the Russian constitution. So let's unpack that for a minute. I'm only going to do it briefly. There's the appearance of democracy going on in Russia, but in reality it's far from democratic. The voting in Russia has been, as we all know, been rigged for years and years and years. Billions of dollars equivalent are being siphoned off towards the military. If Russia is such a peaceful country as Putin claims, why are they spending so much money on defence? Doesn't that smack of the old Soviet Union? It certainly does in my mind, with their non-stop attacks on the neighbouring country of Ukraine, using the old techniques that they used during the Bush era. And what was the area? I think it was South Osteria and North Osteria. Who the heck knows where it was? So we have a correction, just an update, so to speak. And this was in 2008. As preparations for the 2008 Olympic Games reached their final stages, so did the ceasefire agreement between Georgia and South Ossetia, a series of events which began on August 1, eventually culminated into a 5-day war between Georgia, Russia, South Ossetia and some other country, ABKHAZIA, I don't know how to pronounce that, which has been recognised as the first European war in the 21st century. The war ran from August 7 to August 12, 2008, and ended after Russian President Dmitry Medvedev announced the cessation of his peace enforcement campaign in Russia. Hostilities between South Ossetia and Georgia began in 1989, around the time of the Soviet Union's disintegration. Georgia had recently gained recognition as an independent state, and other factions in the region sought a similar fate. So those regions were South Ossetia, that ABK name in Georgia, and North Ossetia, which was in Russia. So that was a clear land grab by the Soviet Union / Russia, whatever you want to call them. And you can look that up, but it's clear that was Russian aggression, and they have not changed. The fact is that Russia was invading a sovereign nation, and now they play the games with their fuel, trying to cut off these countries in the winter. There's another article that follows on from this, and you're welcome to look at it, and its headline is Belarus scrambles for oil amid supply standoff with Russia. Russia is up to its old games. Russia is trying to reinvigorate the old Soviet Union. We should be in no doubt what Putin's antics are about, what his goal is. I don't think it's what Russians' goals are, it's what Putin's goals are. And we should not underestimate the country of Russia. We do that at our peril. And that brings me to Europe. Angela Merkel has signed deals and is continuing to sign more deals for gas and oil pipelines from Russia. Germany in particular, and also most of Europe, even the UK, is getting fuel from Russia. Think about the consequences of that, turning off those taps in the middle of winter. Of course, Germany's got it all figured out with their solar panels. Good luck with that. But this beggars the argument. You must not be reliant on a country that is unstable. One person's whim to turn off the spigots in the middle of winter could be disastrous. Or you could suggest that they might persuade a certain foreign policy to go in one direction or another. Let's just say you turned off or threatened to turn them off with your views on, I don't know, Israel, just say, How about your views on Turkey? Maybe that. How about your views on Iraq? I mean, there are many, many issues where you can turn the screws. This is why no nation should rely on Russia for its resources. It's a bad move. The same goes with China. Any country that really relies on China for trade is making a big mistake. China's only interested in China. They will take things that suit them and use them the way they choose to use them. Watch the South China Sea in the next year, because there's going to be a battle there. It's going to be a battle not between China and the United States. It's going to be a battle between China and Russia, because Despite what they say in public, Russia is very concerned what China's up to in the South China Sea. That's why they're increasing their military. That's the real reason. They don't trust China, even though they're dealing with them. Remember the Second World War? It's always useful, I think, to go back in time. Russia turned their back on Europe. Russia turned their back on the United States. Russia turned their back on Britain and signed an agreement with Germany because it suited them at the time. Yet, who bailed them out at the end of the day? They seem to forget that, don't they? But that's why you can't be confident that Russia can be a true ally. Russia will look after Russia. China will look after China. And we think everybody's our friend. Big mistake. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Spotify, and email. We're on Spotify under the podcast section. Type in Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/aradio. EHRADIO, A radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 11:45 Eastern, and tell your friends and pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the mainstream media want you to know.